Unexplainable Haunts. Discover sinister stories for your spine-chilling birthday stream. Sara was buzzing with energy, hanging colorful decorations that danced with the sunlight filtering through the kitchen window. Her son Max's 10th birthday was finally here, and the sound of laughter filled their modest home, masking her anxiety. But as she skipped over to the window, eager for the cheerful faces of their guests, her gaze fell on Mr. Thompson. He stood outside, smiling too wide, his eyes flickering around as if searching for something hidden, something only he could see. "Do you need help, Sara?" he called out, his voice too bright, too eager, as he insisted on taking care of things she hadn't asked for. How did he know so much about her life? That friendly demeanor felt less like goodwill and more like scrutiny, and an unsettling chill crept down her spine. As the sun dipped, friends arrived, the air thick with cake and squeals of excitement. Yet an indescribable tension coated the room, sharper when the children started sharing ghost stories based on the local folklore. As her son eagerly recounted tales of malevolent spirits lurking around the old, abandoned school down the street, Sara brushed it off, dismissing it as childhood fantasy. But then came the first flicker of the lights, casting brief shadows that twisted ominously against the walls. She shook her head, attributing it to some quirky electrical fault. But then came whispers, soft yet clear, curling through the air like tendrils of smoke. They whispered her name, and her heart froze with dread. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Sara's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, desperately dialing the local authorities, but they brushed her concerns aside. "Just kids being kids," the officer chuckled, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever. Outside, the sun sank completely, painting the world in hues of dark blue and inky black, turning her home from a haven into a cage. That's when she noticed Mr. Thompson again, now standing impossibly close. His eyes filled with an unsettling glint that sent her heart racing. The party spiraled into chaos as the children's laughter morphed into terrified screams, their imaginations sparked by something darker than mere tales. Shadows seemed to creep closer, filling the hallway, thrumming with some primal fear that infected the air. Sara's heart hammered in her chest, each beat growing louder, her breath coming in short gasps. She tried to gather the terrified children, her son's small hand gripping hers as he whispered, "Mom, I don't want to play anymore. The ghosts are angry." A cold dread washed over her, a foreboding chill that seeped through the walls, making her shiver. Then, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into a suffocating darkness. The room reverberated with fear, every muffled sob and whimper echoing her own terror. In that moment, Sara realized with bone-chilling clarity that something malicious had woken. Something that went beyond innocent stories. A sinister force was at play, looming just outside their door. The collective fear of the children mingled with the darkness, and as the faintest whisper of her name curled through the air again, she knew, with growing horror, that time was running out. How could she protect her son when safety had twisted into a nightmare? Her heart dropped. This was only the beginning. Laughter faded into choking silence as darkness seized the room. Sara's breath hitched, and she felt the oppressive weight of unseen eyes watching. The stifling blackness swallowed any flicker of light, and panic surged like wildfire. Children huddled together in trembling clusters, their imaginations spiraling into horrifying visions that seemed all too real. "Mom, make it stop!" Max shouted, his voice cracking. She felt the heat radiating from his small hand, his grip tight and desperate. It sent a wave of determination coursing through her veins. She would protect him no matter what. She fumbled in the dark, trying to remember the layout of the room. Her fingers grazed against the cool surface of a table, sweeping aside scattered cake remnants and party hats. The noise around her grew frantic, Small bodies bumped into one another, hoping for solace in company. Sara's heart raced as whispers intensified, echoing in a chorus that felt almost like the very walls were chanting. "Quick! To the kitchen!" she yelled over the growing panic. Turning towards the sound of her own voice, she felt the presence of something lurking behind her, a shadow that flickered like a half-remembered dream, just out of sight. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. She never believed in ghosts, but tonight, she couldn't ignore the dread that coiled around her. They stumbled into the kitchen, the only place still pulsating with bolts of electric light, illuminated by the sporadic flicker of the overhead bulbs. Her heart sank as she locked eyes with Max, his wide gaze darting around, searching for anything that could make sense of their terror. The promises of carefree fun, of birthday joy, lay shattered like the remains of their cake. Then sheer silence fell. A heavy pause, pregnant with anxious anticipation. It swallowed their breaths. No whispers, no children crying, just endless quiet that made her skin crawl. Sara could feel it building, that electric tension, as if the air itself were charged with impending doom. Suddenly, the darkness erupted into hoarse laughter. A cacophony of voices echoed through the house, all whimsically distorted, mocking their fear. The lights blazed back to life, illuminating not just the kitchen, but Mr. Thompson standing at the doorway. His smile had twisted into something grotesque, his eyes wide with an unholy glow. Those once friendly features were now rough edges of malice. "What's wrong, kids? It's only a game," he jeered, his voice a grating rasp that sliced through the air. Panic surged through Sara's chest. Max clutched her tightly, hiding his face in her leg, the delicious thrill of birthday fun now a distant memory. Mr. Thompson took a step inside, and the shadows slinked from him, sliding across the floor like serpents seeking warmth. "Stay away," Sara shouted, backing up, holding Max protectively. The kids whispered frantically, their fear only fueling the energy that crackled, thick and dark. But the words "not that easy" echoed through her mind as the air turned ice-cold. There was a shift, something profound and unnatural layered beneath the surface of this nightmare. The door swung shut behind Mr. Thompson with a gut-wrenching thud. In that moment, Sara had to make a choice. She had to decide whether to fight against the suffocating terror or to flee into the darkness lurking right behind her. Her instincts screamed for escape, but she couldn't leave the kids her son. As she turned to face the terror, she caught sight of something flickering behind Mr. Thompson. It wasn't just shadows. This was movement, chaos bubbling just beneath. Suddenly, the lights flicked off, plunging them all back into blackness. And then the laughter returned, but now it was different, charged with something vicious, taunting. What lay on the other side? What awaited them in the shadows? Sara knew she had to act quickly. Fear clawed at her, but the burning question loomed. How could she battle a force that was all too ancient, all too hungry? The lights flickered back on, but the brightness now felt sinister, as if casting long shadows with hidden intentions. Mr. Thompson's silhouette loomed even larger, towering over the children, his features sharply defined, yet somehow still warped, like a reflection from a nightmare. "Don't be scared. We can all play together," he crooned, his voice dripping with mockery that sent shivers racing down Sara's spine. The laughter roared from the walls, an echo bouncing back at them, each sound layered with a twisted kind of glee. Max whimpered against her leg, trying to disappear into her side. The others, wide-eyed and trembling, began to sway like leaves caught in a storm. "Where's everyone going?" Mr. Thompson stepped forward, his boots thumping heavily on the floor. "The fun has just begun. Don't you hear them? They want you to join." But no child's voice cried out. No laughter filled the space. Only the oppressive echo of his words filled the room, thickening the sense of dread. A sense of urgency shot through Sara. She needed to break the paralyzing spell he had cast. "Let us go," she yelled, turning to lead the kids to the back door. But as she did, the kitchen felt like a living entity, shifting and closing around them. Reality twisted, and she staggered back, bumping into the table. The glint of the knife set aside from earlier glimmered dangerously under the overhead light. Her heart raced between desperation and instinct. Who knew how long they had before the darkness struck again? Listen to the game, he called, voice haunting, curling into sinister laughter. The darkness wants to play hide and seek, and you'll never find the exit. The kitchen trembled under her feet. Sara turned, senses heightened, eyes darting to the windows, then to the solid door. The panic-stricken children crowded closer, each face a canvas painted with raw terror. As if sensing her intentions, Mr. Thompson laughed louder, a sound that rattled the very foundation. You won't escape, Sara. They are waiting for you beyond the light. Suddenly, a sharp crack erupted from behind him. A vase shattered against the floor, sending shards scattering like glassy stars. The kids gasped, a collective intake of breath filled with confusion and dread. In the chaos, a movement caught Sara's eye, a shadow detaching from the wall. Stay close, she commanded, stepping back instinctively. But it was too late. The darkness wailed, pulling silhouettes from the corners, stretching into grotesque forms. Their eyes hollow, their mouths gaping. Pick a side, Mr. Thompson bellowed, as the shadowed figures lunged forward. Which will it be, safety or all-consuming darkness? Time slowed as Sara's heart split between the children and that glimmering knife. Adrenaline surged, and she knew she had to make a choice. She tightened her grip on Max, feeling the small tremors of fear radiating off him. Fight! A small voice shouted from one of the older kids, breaking the fog of horror for an instant. We can't let him take us. But as more shadows trickled through the door, a suffocating despair crept in, seeping into their very bones. What was left to fight against when the enemy shimmered and shimmered out of reach? Max trembled, his eyes wide. Mom, please! In that agonizing moment, Sara's gaze darted once more to the knife. If not for safety, perhaps for defense. She licked her dry lips, her mind racing with possibilities, but each one appeared more futile than the last. And then, without warning, the lights faded again, plunging them into a complete, utter void. A low murmur swelled around them, satin whispers weaving through the air, caressing her ears but growing heavy with menace. What are you going to do now, Sara? The laughter echoed back, cruel, unending, as shadows swirled around her and the children. She felt the knife slipping from her grasp. As it clattered to the floor, the darkness enveloped them, a suffocating grip, and her last thought lingered hauntingly. How could she fight a game that was already lost? Just before everything faded into silence, a spark ignited in the void. What could it be? Was escape truly impossible? Suddenly, a flash of light appeared like a beacon in the blackness, a glimmer of hope or another trap. The flash of light pulsed, drawing out desperate breaths from the haze. It flickered erratically, like the heartbeat of something alive, something that could sense their dread. Sara squinted, trying to make sense of it, gripping Max tighter. He still whimpered, lost in the abyss. Stay close, she whispered, though her voice felt swallowed by the thick darkness. The pulse grew stronger, illuminating their surroundings. A fleeting glimpse of the kitchen twisted into grotesque forms, shadows clinging to the corners, as if drawn to the light yet unable to approach it. Mr. Thompson's laughter echoed, a distorted sound that vibrated through the air. Foolish girl, he mocked, his voice slithering through the void. You think a flicker can save you? The dark wants you, it hungers. Ignoring his taunts, Sara focused on that light. Her heart pounded. They had to move. We need to run. She hoisted Max in her arms, every ounce of her being urging the others to follow. Casually, the shadows flickered as if they were alive, swirling, pooling, waiting for that signal to strike. Go, she shouted again. The other kids, Emma, Noah, and Jake, hesitated, their faces washed in fear yet desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. What about the knife? Jake asked, glancing towards the floor where it fell, its edge glimmering underneath the growing light, beckoning her closer. Forget it, Sara snapped, urgency lifting her voice. It won't help us now. But as she turned to run, her foot caught on the edge of something cold and metallic. The knife! It was still there, its sharp edge almost breathing. She stumbled, crashing to the floor as the shadows stirred around her, inching closer. "Help!" Max shrieked, his little hands clawing at her shoulder, panic-stricken. In that moment, Sara felt the shadows close in like a shroud, wrapping around her legs, chilling her skin. She grabbed the knife with a trembling hand, the cool grip steadying her resolve. "We can fight," she called, fear morphing into determination. Suddenly, the walls of the kitchen screamed, a sound of torment that reverberated through the air, resonating like a funeral dirge. The children yelped, retreating further, their eyes reflecting the horror unfolding before them. "Playtime is over," Mr. Thompson voiced, the delight stripped from his words, replaced with brutal malice. "Now it's time for your reckoning." Sara scrambled to her feet, heart roaring through sheer adrenaline. "This way," she urged, using the knife to point toward the light, trying to cut through the suffocating gloom. They needed to reach it. The light was a sanctuary, a flicker of hope amidst the insanity. But as they rushed forward, the darkness thickened, pulling at their heels, clawing for them with cruel, persistent fingers. Emma fell behind, her scream tearing through the air as shadows ensnared her. "Emma!" Sara cried out, but the girl was gone, swallowed whole by the tide. "No!" Noah shouted, his voice cracking. "We can't leave her. Forget her!" Jake cried, panic seeping into his words. "We need to go." Sara hesitated, heart torn between loyalty and survival. They couldn't afford to stop, not now. Adjusting her grip on the knife, she dug her heels into the ground. "No, we can't leave anyone behind. If we fight together," but before the thought settled, the darkness surged, overwhelming them, wrapping around her arms, pulling her backward. She struggled, the knife slipping from her grasp, falling to the floor. In that split second, the light flickered again, shimmering with the promise of escape, standing just beyond reach. Then, from the shadows, emerged a chill whisper that ground her resolve to a halt. "You can't save everyone, Sara." Embrace the darkness. The realization settled cold as ice. What if the darkness wasn't trying to take them? What if it wanted something else entirely, something born from their own fears? "I won't let you take me," Sara shouted defiantly, though the weight of despair pressed down on her shoulders. The shadows paused, as if assessing her defiance. Sara's heart raced, fear and fury battling inside. What lay before her was a choice, but what if the only escape was bartering with the darkness itself? In the depths of her heart, a whisper throbbed back, tempting her with the unknown. She had to make a decision. Before the shadows could close in, a sudden surge of energy jolted through her. And as the light flickered once more, illuminating a path drenched in ominous potential, Sara knew she must choose her next move, or risk losing everything. What awaited her in the light? Redemption? Or was it simply another trap set by a deeper darkness? The light pulsed again, brighter this time, as if responding to Sara's desperation. Everything around her shifted. Shadows danced wildly, but hunger and malice remained just beneath. "Keep moving," she yelled, her voice a combination of fear and fury. Max clung to her, wide-eyed and trembling. The remaining children hesitated, their fear palpable. The air thickened, their breaths turned shallow. Sara felt a strange warmth from the knife still in her hand, an echo of reassurance. "If we can reach the light," she murmured, but doubt gnawed at her heart. "Look out," Noah shouted, pointing as shadowy tendrils emerged from the corners, stretching towards them like hungry serpents. "Run," Jake screamed, and that was all it took. They moved as one, a pack driven by instinct. Sara felt the shadows whip against her legs, dragging her back, cold and desperate. She pressed forward, the point of the knife aiming straight ahead. The walls moaned, a cacophony of grief and anguish. Each note seemed to vibrate through the very bones of the house. This space was alive, writhing and breathing, imprisoned in darkness and drenched in despair. "Don't look back," Sara shouted, her heart racing as another childish scream echoed through the halls, sending chills down her spine. Emma was gone, but the weight of those they might lose fueled her determination. "We have to stick together." "No," Jake yelled. "We have to get out." One glance back at the dark maw where Emma once stood sent a shiver down her spine. Was it regret that twisted in her gut? Or was it the grip of fear that the darkness would take them all? From the depths, Mr. Thompson's laughter erupted again, more sinister than before. "You can't escape, children. I know what you fear, and I will make you confront it." "Shut up," Noah yelled back, fury flaring in him. "We're not afraid. Are you not?" Mr. Thompson's voice slithered through the air, dripping with mockery. Suddenly, shadows writhed and shifted behind the children, ghostly images materializing in flickering light. Faces tormented by pain, expressions twisted in agony. "You will face what you've buried in your hearts." Sara's throat felt tight. Each face wrought with a memory, a fear some deeper than the dark. She felt them pull at her sanity, clawing for a release. "No, stay focused." She pushed forward, the knife firm in her grip. The flickering light grew brighter, surrounding them like a protective aura, but behind it loomed a thick sea of darkness. The shadows shrieked, clawing at the edges of the light, desperate to reclaim their prey. "Hold on to each other," Sara yelled. "We can do this." But tension filled the air. An abrupt shifting sound drew her attention, and she froze. Max was tugging at her shirt, wide-eyed and pointing. Something moved between them and their sanctuary, a shape looming out of the darkness. "What's that?" Jake whispered, voice trembling. And in that moment, the shape prowled into the light, revealing itself slowly, deliberately, a more substantial silhouette with haunting eyes that gleamed in the flicker. A familiar figure, but twisted, grotesque. Sara's breath caught. "Kids, it's time for your last game." The voice, slick and wretched, oozed from the being. The shadows pulsed with excitement, eager, awaiting the next twist of fate. "Do you think courage can overcome me?" The figure mocked, its laughter resonating through the dim kitchen. The children looked around, panic flickering in their eyes as realization settled. This was a different kind of confrontation, one that would peel back layers of guilt, fear, and abandonment. Together, Sara shouted, desperation pouring into every ounce of her being. "Remember who we are." But as they tightened their circle, the figure raised a hand, pointed directly at Max. "Will you let the innocent pay the price?" Time froze, tension hanging thick in the air. Sara's stomach plummeted. This was the moment, the ultimate choice, and the light flickered uncertainly as if even it feared the answer. What was she willing to sacrifice to protect her friends? The darkness closed in, hungry and insatiable, an ominous whisper echoing in their minds as the truth began to unravel. What if, in the end, the greatest monster they faced was themselves? The shadows roared, denser now, curling around them like an angry storm. The oppressive weight tugged at Sara's limbs, urging her to surrender, to succumb to the dread that clawed at their edges. "Max!" she shouted, fear tightening her throat. The boy looked at her, heart-stopping vulnerability etched across his face. "Stay with us." The grotesque figure laughed again, beckoning with a skeletal finger. "A game of choice, my dear children. One innocent for your escape or take a chance to save them all. What'll it be?" The question lingered in the stale air, thick and suffocating, as the others exchanged horrified glances. "No," Jake spit out, his voice rising. "We want to choose." The entity's eyes glimmered, feeding off their terror. "But children, you must. Each heart bears a secret. Each secret brings forth a fear. Which of you will confront your truth to save the rest?" It flicked its wrist, and the shadows folded, revealing a nightmare glimpsed in flickering light. The children gasped. Confronting their fears, Noah saw a vision of his overwhelmed mother, tears streaming down her face. Jake witnessed a ghostly replica of himself lying lifeless, ignored by those he thought cared. "What's happening?" Max whimpered, and Sara's heart broke at the sight of his terror. "No. Focus. Everyone. Push it away," Sara commanded, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her. The knife felt heavy, its warmth suddenly cold against her skin. "And what about you, Sara?" The voice oozed from the figure, dripping with cruel delight. "Will you face the shadow of your brother?" Her breath hitched. Memories flooded back, fights, resentment, the day he left. "Shut up," she screamed, desperate to drown out the accusation. But it seeped into her mind, wounds freshly opened. What a strong denial. The figure took one step closer, and shadows ebbed towards Sara, begging for her surrender. "Make it stop, please," she cried, feeling the bitterness claw at her chest. All her friends were locking eyes, faces pale. Fear knotted in the corners of their mouths. "It's too late to avoid your past, and deeper fears will surface," the entity hissed, relishing their agony. Each child grew quiet, fears drilling into their minds and spreading like poison. Cloaked arms reached for Max, and he staggered backward, mirroring Sara's unsteadiness. "I don't want to," he pleaded, clutching his head as shadows whispered hateful words. "Children, time is running thin." The laughter rang hollow, resonating with the agony draped around them. "What will you sacrifice?" As Sara felt her heart pounding against her ribs, she glanced at Max. A surge of warmth coursed through her. Fear had to be banished. Courage needed a stage. "We don't need to sacrifice anyone. Fight together." But as she shouted, a howl echoed within her, a wave crashing against her resolve. What if she was wrong? What if confronting their fears meant losing one of them permanently? The shadows encircled tighter now, the light revealing sinister faces, each a reflection of terrible burdens. The anguish made Sara's heart race, disallowing any escape from her haunting memories. "Choose." The figure slithered closer, close enough that she could almost smell the decay of its existence. Sara and her friends stood at the precipice of truth and consequences, with doubt penetrating every ounce of determination. The choice lurked, monstrous and demanding, but it would be on them no escape without sacrifice. Yet, as the walls trembled and the air thickened, something else broke within the darkness, a whisper of defiance threaded through. What if they did find a way? In that crucial moment, a blinding light flickered, faster this time. It seemed to pulse with their heartbeats, as if inviting them to push against the gnawing despair. Would it be enough to untangle their entwined fates? The darkness roared in protest, and the figure disappeared into a laughing cacophony. Their fears battled hard against the rising light, creating a storm of clashing hopes. And then, a voice whispered through the chaos. "Face what you fear." Together when the children merged, their hands, determination surged within them. But as the shadows writhed and retreated, the voice erupted again. "Your final test begins." What would emerge from the depths of their minds? And was there really a way out, or was the darkness simply playing with them? Sara felt the jolt in her stomach when the shadows twisted and churned, eager to reclaim what they had momentarily lost. The figure stood now, rematerialized, towering over them with an unsettling glee. "Ah, together you are formidable. But isolation can be the darkest secret of all. Can't it?" "Don't listen to it," Jake shouted, panic bleeding into his voice. He took a step forward, puffing out his chest like a frightened rooster. "We won't give in. We'll fight. Brave." Yes, the entity moved like smoke, curling around Jake, its spectral face poised frighteningly close. "But your inner demons are waiting for the call. Are you prepared to confront them?" As if on cue, shadows rose up from the ground, reaching for each child, wrapping around their ankles like icy tendrils. Sara gasped, feeling a grip of terror tightening around her throat. "Help!" Max's voice cracked, tears shining in his eyes as shadows slithered around his small frame, pulling him away from the group. "No!" Sara lunged forward but felt invisible chains holding her back. Heart racing, she felt an unbearable urgency pulse through her veins. They had to fight against whatever this thing wanted. "Remember your fears." The entity hissed, and suddenly, it released a storm of images. Each child faced their nightmare as phantoms boomed in the darkness. Memories, faces of betrayal, lost ones, abandoned dreams. Noah's fight with his father filtered through the haze, the argument echoing in his mind as sharp as the day it was spoken, the words not good enough slashing through his brain, leaving scars. Sara moved, vibrating with fear. Noah, fight it. But he trembled, almost folding under the weight of isolation. What if it's true? No, it's a lie, Jake screamed, fighting the shadows clinging to his legs. These illusions can't hold you. But their words felt flimsy against the laughter that drowned them, bouncing off the walls like a cruel wind. Choose your truth, the figure taunted, relishing the desperation in their eyes. One of you must step into the abyss and confess your fear. Will you sacrifice your friend's heart to save your own? The terror coiled tighter, and now Sara felt hot tears sliding down her cheeks. I can't let any of us go. They were friends. Family. Choose. The entity demanded again, a sinister grin spreading across its skeletal face. One must fall to save the rest. Witness the price of true fear. Max, sensing their hesitation, started to step forward. I'll do it. I'll say my fear. I know, Sara shouted, her voice cracking. The moment hung in the air, the weight of unspoken fears palpable. Would one of them truly sacrifice themselves? They stood on the edge of obliteration, surrounded by darkness whispering promises of relief for betrayal. And then, amidst the chaos, the blinding light pulsed harder, competing with the encroaching shadows. Step back, Sara exclaimed, gripping Max's hand tighter. We fight together. No one gets left behind. The shadows hesitated, and the laughter faltered. For a brief moment, the figure seemed distracted, its hold loosening. Max's eyes shone with a glint of hope. We can do this, together. But as they clung to one another, a deep rumble echoed throughout the space, shaking the very ground beneath them. The boundaries of reality began to blur, fear and courage intertwined as the shadows writhed, straining against the light. Then it all exploded into chaos. What will be your final choice? The figure's voice boomed, an ominous echoing that cracked like thunder in the distance. With a roar of protest, the shadows surged forward again, teeth bared like hungry wolves. Sara felt her heart race, a paradoxical blend of terror and determination. What would happen now? Would their unity be enough to conquer this darkness? Just as the engulfing shadows threatened to swallow them whole once again, something unseen and unfathomable stirred at their core. Would they break apart and succumb, or stand firm as the storm raged? Together, they shouted in unison. More than just a mantra, it was their last stand against despair. But the figure roared, echoing their cries with a burst of sinister delight. Oh, but the end will come with a cost. Are you prepared for the truth? As the darkness lunged again, their screams clashed with the laughter, leaving the air thick with uncertainty. What awaited them as their resolve was tested? Or would they unravel, one by one, consumed by the shadows they dared to confront? The shadows surged forward with a ferocity that made Sara's heart pound louder than the thunder. She squeezed Max's hand tighter, their grip a fragile lifeline against the darkness. But the smoky tendrils wrapped around them, pulsing, almost alive. With every inch the shadows consumed, Sara felt their coldness creep into her bones, whispering promises of despair and hopelessness. Fight, Jake shouted, straining against the grasping darkness, his voice cracking under the pressure. We've got to keep fighting. Remember what we are. Noah, think about your mom, Sara cried out, desperation lacing her voice as she caught a glimpse of Noah's face twisted in fear. This isn't real. None of this is real. Above the vicious whispers of the shadows, the entity's laughter echoed, vibrating through the very air around them, mocking their courage. Do you think strength comes from denial? Turn your gaze inward, face the truth. Little girl. It hissed directly at Sara, drawing closer, its chilling breath sending shivers down her spine. An image blinked into existence before Sara's eyes. Her family, gathered around the dinner table as she sat alone in the corner, the laughter rolling past her like waves against a cliff. The memories swung like pendulums in her mind, slicing deeper as they came. I wanted to belong, she whispered, the truth clawing its way to the surface. Don't, Jake interjected, his voice hoarse but urgent. Don't give it power. We can't let it take our truths. But the entity only laughed, the sound almost joyous. But you see, each of you holds a piece of your own darkness. Will you let it consume you, or will you set it free? Its glowing eyes bore into each child, searching, hungry. Sara felt her breath hitch. She felt the despair clawing at her, begging to break free, to swallow her whole. Panic erupted, their collective fear radiating like a beacon, and Max stepped forward, shaking his head defiantly. "I'll stand for all of us," he shouted, voice cracking. His tiny body trembled as the shadows surrounded him, threatening to drag him into their grasp. "No." The word escaped Sara's lips like a desperate prayer. "Max, don't do it." But he pressed on. "It's okay. I know." Another lunge from the shadows, and Sara felt an icy sweat break across her brow. "Max, you're not alone. We all have fears. We can face them together." Her voice rang with the strength of truth, cutting through the din. "No, one must fall." The entity growled, its patience fraying as it blurred faster and faster, darkness merging with despair. "You dare defy me? This may be your last chance." The air thickened, as if the weight of their fears and the shadows were too much to bear, pressing against their chests like a fist. Sara felt an overwhelming urge to scream a primal sound that would shatter the stillness. But she couldn't let go. She couldn't surrender. "Count to 3, Jake urged, sweat trickling down his brow. "On 3, we run toward the light. Together," Sara echoed, heart racing as the shadowy figures loomed. 1, the darkness pulled tighter, an unyielding grip threatening to tear them apart. 2, the laughter became a wail, shrieking discordant chords that seemed to penetrate their very souls. 3, with one last collective surge, they propelled themselves towards the light, a dizzying whirl of adrenaline. Sara felt the cold retreat, only for the weight of the darkness to return with a different ferocity, breaking the bond and sending them skittering across the ground, tumbling into a netherworld coarse and quiet, as if swallowing their screams. She blinked away the chaotic swirl, her vision clearing slowly against the dim glow illuminating the barren landscape. An eerie silence enveloped them now, and shadows began to shift ominously around the perimeter of the unknown wasteland. "What just happened?" Max whispered, trembling as the shadows danced at the edges. Are we safe?" From across the distance, a figure emerged, sleek and serpentine, reflecting the faint light. It slithered into view, its smile promising danger entwined with temptation. The voice slithered through the air, smooth as silk but cold as death. "Welcome to your fear's playground. Are you ready to dance?" Sara's heart plummeted. They may have escaped one darkness, but now they stood at the precipice of something far worse. What did this new threat want? Would their ordeal only begin here? The figure shifted closer, the shadows pooling around it like loyal followers, each tendril curling in anticipation. Sara took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of her dread settle heavily across her shoulders. Its eyes glinted with malice, the kind one reads about in bedtime stories, tales meant to keep children from wandering too far into the dark. "Dance?" Noah asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean?" The creature chuckled softly, a sound like glass shattering in silence. "Oh, dear children, you misunderstand. This isn't a joyous affair. It's a game, a waltz, if you will, between your fears and my desires." Max shivered, backing into Sara, who could feel his heartbeat thrumming against her own. The creature's smile widened, dark and seductive, revealing teeth that glinted like silver knives. Sara couldn't help but take a step back. "Do you not wish to know yourselves?" it asked, tilting its head, the shadows molding to its form as if they were part of its twisted dance. "No," Jake snapped, fists clenching. "We're not interested in whatever sick game you're playing. Just let us go." The entity leaned forward, a collage of flickering shadows casting grotesque shapes on the ground. "Let you go? But where's the fun in that?" It snickered, the sound unsettling, like a child's laughter turned sour. "You see, the darkness doesn't want you as mere spectators. It craves participants." Before they could react, The ground beneath Sara began to tremble, a throbbing pulse resonating upwards from deep within. Her stomach turned. It felt alive, thrumming with a malicious heartbeat. The air grew thick, stifling, almost viscous, pressing around them like a funeral shroud. "What's happening?" Max squeaked, panic igniting the edges of his voice. "Hold on," Sara shouted, grabbing him and Jake by the arms as she steadied her breathing. "We have to stay together." The shadows writhed and twisted, forming abstract shapes that plunged toward them. Unearthly images flickered into focus, her childhood nightmares, Jake's insecurities, each painful memory embodied before them, tauntingly vivid. Sara could hear echoes of their voices intertwined with the entity's ghastly laughter, amplifying her fears, a chorus of everything she had ever run from. "No!" Jake cried, his voice barely above a whisper as it turned into a desperate plea. "Not this, not again." A wave of darkness crashed down upon them, enveloping their minds with the suffocating weight of regret and sorrow. Sara's heart raced. There had to be some way out. She grasped desperately for words, anything that could break the spell. "Together," she shouted, desperation igniting in her throat. "We can fight it. Remember who we are. We're not just our fears." The energy shifted for a moment, the shadows halting like smoke being drawn back. But the entity's laughter blared even louder, shattering their resolve, drowning out their voices. "Ah, but little girl, do you not see? Your unity only binds you tighter to the dance. Will you fall or will you lead?" Without warning, the shadows lunged again, a dark tidal wave intent on sweeping them away. Panic clawed at Sara's throat. She pulled the others close, fortified by the strength of their shared promise. But as she looked into Max's frightened eyes, a cold fear gripped her heart, a realization that they may never escape this spiraling nightmare. All at once, the shadows withdrew, and an unsettling quiet settled over the wasteland. The creature receded, but it hadn't left. She could still feel its presence lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. "What now?" Sara breathed, feeling all hope drain away as uncertainty loomed large. The ground beneath them quaked again, just as the shadows peeled back. A dim light flickered on the horizon, out of reach but unmistakable, a beacon, or perhaps another trap. "It's time to choose," the figure hissed from the dark. "Will you face the truth, or will you let the fears consume you?" They stood on the brink, the air thickening with dread, torn between light and darkness. Their pasts whispered promises of pain, while the light flickered, calling them forward with a sinister allure. What lay ahead? Would they confront the demons or succumb to the shadows? The choice hung precariously in the air, shrouded in mystery. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as the creature's challenge hung heavy in the air. Sara could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest, a suffocating dread wrapping around her throat. But amidst the fear, a spark of defiance flickered inside her. Max needed her. The other children needed her. Together, she shouted again, "We know fear, but we are more than what haunts us." Her voice cut through the stagnation, echoing against the shadows that coiled around them like serpents. Jake, emboldened by Sara's conviction, stepped forward. "I won't let these shadows dictate who I am. I am not my fears." Noah lifted his chin, determination etched on his face. "We stand united. We face this together." His words breathed life into their fragile hopes, solidifying their resolve. "Right," Emma echoed, stepping up beside them. "We are not alone, and we refuse to be pawns in your game." For the first time, the entity's grin faltered, its eyes narrowing in disbelief. The shadows quivered as if uncertain of their next move, momentarily losing their grip on the children. "Don't let up," Sara urged, sensing their moment of weakness. "We must push through. Hold onto each other." With hands clasped together, the group formed a human wall against the encroaching darkness. Their breaths syncopated in harmony, a rhythmic chant of both fear and courage, throbbing through the air like a heartbeat. The creature recoiled, suddenly more shadow than form, raging against their unity. "You think you can escape the dance? Without facing your fears?" it demanded, its ethereal voice hissing through the air. You miss the truth buried deep within your hearts. But their resolve only grew stronger. The truth is we are stronger together, Max shouted, his young voice ringing out clear and fearless, the tremor in his words replaced with strength. The creature shrieked, anger curdling the air, swirling shadows whipping around them like a storm. You think yourselves invincible? It sneered, the darkness thickening again. You cannot simply wish away the truths you hide. Sara felt the shadows pressing in, pushing against her memories. Visions of her own failures, doubts, and regrets flashed before her eyes, trying to pull her down. But they weren't alone. Keep going, she urged, squeezing Max and Emma's hands, the warmth of their friendship grounding her. These fears have no power over us unless we let them. As they held onto one another, the pulsing light grew brighter, illuminating their path through the suffocating dark. With each shared breath, with each declaration of strength, the tendrils of darkness twisted and shrank away, struggling against the tide of their resolve. The entity writhed, its features morphing into grotesque shapes. Do you truly believe you can break free? It hissed, desperation creeping into its voice. Your light will only bring you harm. Sara planted her feet firmly, the knife still clutched in her hand, a symbol of her determination. We are not here to fight fear with fear. We will not sacrifice each other. We will not become shadows. Together, they stepped forward, merging their energies into a single beam of brilliance that shot out from their intertwined hands. The light expanded, growing to envelop them, blinding and pure, washing over the dark landscape in a cascade of glory. The shadows hissed and screeched, engulfing the creature in their chaotic thrall. But it was too late. The radiant light overwhelmed the darkness, pushing it back, banishing the entity as their fears fell silent one by one. What's happening? Max murmured, awe shining through his still trembling face. Trust it. Together we can overcome. Sara shouted as the light embraced them in a wave of warmth and brightness. With one wash of brilliance, the darkness dissipated into nothingness, the echoes of fear dissolving as the last remnants of the entity extinguished like a single candle in a raging storm. As the blinding light faded, the children found themselves standing together in their kitchen, the familiar warmth of home embracing them once more. The birthday decorations still hung vibrantly, untouched by the horrors they had faced. Max looked around, eyes wide. Did we really just... Yes, Sara exhaled, feeling an ocean of relief wash over her. She knelt, pulling him into her arms. We faced it together. He buried his face in her shoulder, as the other children began to regroup, smiles creeping back onto their faces, laughter bubbling perhaps from relief, perhaps from disbelief. As the air filled with a renewed energy, Sara looked around at the faces of her friends, who had battled the shadows alongside her. Each of them had faced their truths, dismantled the darkness that loomed over their heads, and emerged not just alive, but stronger. Moms are supposed to make things better, she started, and tonight we did it together. You guys are my heroes. They grinned back at her, hearts mending in the shared laughter that returned, echoing off the colorful walls of the kitchen. Outside, the moon shone bright, casting an ethereal glow across the lawn, a promise of light, untainted. They had conquered the shadows lurking at the edge of their imaginations. Together they had faced the darkness and won. And as the sun began to rise, slicing through the darkness of night, Sara knew that the true magic lay not just in the light or shadows they had encountered that night, but in the bonds of trust and courage they forged unbreakable. Before they started on the next chapter of their lives, now bathed in newfound resilience, one thing was clear. Darkness could never win again when you have each other. Don't hesitate. If you loved this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. And smash that like button now to help us reach more fans like you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happened. I want to know what you think. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible finale. This is the moment to show your support.